Have you ever wondered why, despite years of spiritual seeking, prayer and religious devotion, God still feels distant and unreachable? What if everything you've been taught about finding the divine has been leading you in the wrong direction all along? For centuries, humanity has been on a relentless quest for divine connection. We've built magnificent cathedrals and temples, we've studied ancient texts until the pages wore thin, we've followed spiritual teachers across continents, all searching for that elusive presence we call God. Has this ever happened to you? That moment when, despite all your devotion, you still feel something essential is missing? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. What Joel Goldsmith discovered through his profound spiritual journey might completely transform how you understand your relationship with the divine. The revolutionary truth that changed his life and could change yours is both shockingly simple and deeply profound. The Christ consciousness you've been desperately seeking outside yourself has always been within you. Not as some vague spiritual concept or comforting belief, but as the fundamental reality of your very being. This isn't about adopting a new belief system or adding another spiritual practice to your already busy life. It's about recognizing what has always been true about you before any thought, emotion, or experience ever arose in your awareness. The divine presence isn't something you need to attain through years of disciplined practice or earn through righteous behavior. It's your original nature, your true spiritual identity that exists beyond all temporary human experiences that seem to define who you are. Stay with me until the end of this series, because what you're about to discover might surprise you in ways that could completely transform your experience of life itself. When you truly understand that Christ consciousness isn't a historical figure who lived 2,000 years ago or some distant deity sitting in judgment of your every action, but rather the very essence of your being, something miraculous happens. Imagine moving through your days from a place of inherent wholeness rather than constant seeking. Imagine relating to your challenges and difficulties from a consciousness of divine indifference, not callous disconnection, but unshakable inner peace that remains steady regardless of outer circumstances. What if the answer to the spiritual longing that's been driving your search has been present within you all along, quietly waiting for recognition beneath the noise of your thinking mind and the drama of your emotional life? What if the divine presence you've been seeking through books, teachers, and sacred places is actually the awareness that's reading these very words right now? The profound mystical realization that Joel Goldsmith experienced wasn't the result of intellectual study or religious doctrine. It came through direct experience, a moment of pure recognition that changed everything for him and could do the same for you. His revelation wasn't the product of years in theological seminaries or endless hours poring over ancient texts. It emerged from the depths of silent contemplation, from moments of complete surrender to that which exists beyond the thinking mind. If these teachings speak to your heart, hit subscribe to join our community of spiritual explorers on this journey of discovering the Christ consciousness within. You see, Joel Goldsmith had tried the conventional path. He'd studied spiritual texts, followed religious practices, and sought guidance from various teachers. But something fundamental was missing in this approach, a direct, lived experience of the truth he was seeking. The journey toward this revelation wasn't about accumulating more knowledge, but about allowing a deeper recognition to dawn within his consciousness. The breakthrough came during those quiet moments of pure presence, when the noise of mental chatter subsided and something else, something infinitely more profound, emerged into awareness. In that space of inner stillness, Goldsmith experienced a fundamental shift in perception. He saw with absolute clarity that the Christ consciousness he had been seeking had never been separate from him, not even for a millisecond. This wasn't just another spiritual insight to add to his collection of beliefs. It was a complete revolution in how he experienced himself and the world around him. The mindset transformation was so profound that it rippled through every aspect of his existence. Perhaps, most remarkably, chronic physical conditions that had plagued him for years, conditions that hadn't responded to medical treatments, simply dissolved without intervention. This wasn't faith healing in the conventional sense. It was the natural result of recognizing his true identity beyond the limited concept of a physical body subject to illness and deterioration. But the revelations didn't stop there. Financial concerns that had created constant worry and limitation in his life began resolving themselves in ways he couldn't have orchestrated through strategic planning or willpower. Abundance started flowing naturally, not because he was manifesting it through techniques or affirmations, but because he was living from a different foundation altogether, one where lack had never been the truth of his being. The hidden truth behind these seemingly miraculous transformations wasn't that Goldsmith had finally found the right spiritual technique or practice. It was that he had recognized something fundamental about the nature of consciousness itself. The impact of this recognition was so complete that his entire journey through life took on a different quality, one marked by grace rather than struggle, by allowing rather than forcing, by recognition rather than achievement. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what this profound spiritual understanding actually means for our day-to-day experience. When we begin to recognize that Christ consciousness isn't something distant or separate from us, but the very essence of our being, we discover a freedom that changes everything about how we navigate life's challenges and opportunities. The decision to recognize your true nature isn't just another spiritual step on an endless path. It's a fundamental reset of your entire relationship with existence. It's about discovering the ground of being that has always been present beneath the surface turbulence of thoughts, emotions, and changing circumstances. If you're feeling a resonance with these words, write in the comments, "I recognize the truth within." When we speak of recognizing that Christ lives within us, we're talking about something far more profound than simply adopting a new spiritual concept or belief system. This isn't about intellectually agreeing with a doctrine or repeating affirmations until you convince yourself of something. It's about a direct recognition of what is already true about your nature right now, in this very moment. Consider this revelation. The pure awareness that is reading these words right now, the consciousness that observes your thoughts arising and passing, that notices sensations in your body and emotions flowing through your experience. This awareness itself is Christ consciousness expressing as your individual being. It's not something you need to create, develop, or attain through spiritual practice. It's what you already are beneath the constant stream of thoughts, emotions, and sensations that typically dominate your attention. This shift in perspective catalyzes a profound transformation in how you relate to the challenges and problems that inevitably arise in human experience. When you truly understand that Christ lives in you, you no longer approach difficulties from a place of lack, fear, or desperation. Your mindset undergoes a fundamental recalibration. Instead of seeing problems as obstacles to overcome or enemies to defeat, you begin to recognize them as opportunities to express your divine nature. The struggle against circumstances begins to dissolve as you realize that your essential being is already whole, perfect, and lacking absolutely nothing. This doesn't mean challenges magically disappear from your life. It means your relationship to them changes so completely that they no longer have the power to disturb your inner peace. Behind the scenes of this transformation is a revolutionary insight. The divine consciousness that constitutes your true identity isn't affected by any circumstance, condition, or temporary experience. Just as the sun continues shining regardless of passing clouds, your spiritual essence remains untouched by the changing weather patterns of human experience. This understanding creates a new foundation for navigating life's journey. Rather than constantly fighting against what is or desperately trying to change conditions through willpower and endless effort, you begin operating from a recognition of your inherent completeness. Decisions flow from a place of wisdom rather than fear. Actions emerge naturally, from clarity rather than from reaction to perceived threats or limitations. Subscribe now to deepen your understanding of these transformative spiritual principles that can completely reshape your experience of life's challenges. The impact of this shift extends far beyond just feeling better about your problems. It completely reconfigures how you move through the world. You begin experiencing what Goldsmith called divine indifference, which isn't callousness or lack of caring, but rather a profound stability that remains unshaken regardless of outer appearances. Let's explore this further by examining how this recognition illuminates our approach to the specific challenges that appear in our daily lives. Whether they manifest as health concerns, relationship difficulties, or financial pressures, the pathway to freedom isn't about eliminating these situations, but recognizing the truth of who you are in relation to them. If you've experienced moments where you glimpse this deeper reality beyond your problems, write in the comments, "I've felt this peace within." When we begin living from this understanding, we naturally develop what Goldsmith called divine indifference. Now, this term might sound alarming at first, as if it suggests becoming cold or unfeeling toward the suffering in our world or in our own lives. But that's not at all what this concept describes. Divine indifference is actually a profound inner peace, a remarkable stability that remains unshaken, regardless of what's happening in the external world. Imagine standing in the eye of a hurricane. All around you, winds rage and destruction unfolds, yet where you stand, there is perfect stillness. This is the kind of centered presence that emerges when you recognize your true identity as spiritual being rather than as vulnerable human personality, subject to the countless forces that seem to control ordinary experience. This isn't spiritual bypassing or denial of human reality, it's anchoring your awareness in something more fundamental than the temporary weather patterns of circumstance. The insights behind this transformation have been whispered by mystics throughout the ages, yet they often get obscured by complex theological systems or diluted into intellectual concepts that miss the essential revelation. Here's where Goldsmith's teaching becomes truly revolutionary. He understood that the journey to spiritual awakening isn't about becoming something you're not currently. It's not about achieving enlightenment through decades of arduous practice or earning divine connection through virtuous behavior. The breakthrough realization is that you don't need to become spiritual. You already are a spiritual being in your essential nature. This mindset shift changes everything. Instead of approaching spirituality as a journey of achievement where you gradually accumulate enough merit, practice, or wisdom to finally reach a distant goal, you recognize what has always been true about you in this very moment. The Christ consciousness isn't something you must develop or attain. It's what you are beneath the layers of conditioned thinking and temporary human experience. This revelation often triggers a profound sense of relief. All those years of spiritual striving, of feeling like you're never quite there yet, suddenly reveal themselves as unnecessary. The paradigm completely shifts from becoming to being, from achieving to recognizing, from future attainment to present, Reality. Consider how this might transform your approach to meditation, prayer, or spiritual practice. Instead of using these as techniques to eventually reach enlightenment or divine connection, they become opportunities to clear away the temporary clouds of thought and emotion that obscure your recognition of what already is. They're not ladders to climb, but windows to open, allowing the light that's always been present to shine through more clearly. This approach completely reframes the spiritual journey. Rather than seeing yourself as a separate being trying to connect with a distant divine source, you recognize that the divine source is what you already are in your deepest essence. This isn't spiritual theory. It's the practical foundation for a completely different way of moving through life's challenges and opportunities. Let's explore how this recognition manifests in everyday experience, particularly when we face situations that would normally trigger stress, anxiety, or a sense of being overwhelmed. The practical application of this truth is where its power becomes most evident. If you've ever felt that spiritual growth was too complicated or out of reach, type in the comments, "I am already complete." What happens when this recognition of Christ consciousness becomes more than an occasional insight but your lived reality? Something truly remarkable begins to unfold in your relationships with others. Without any conscious effort to heal or help anyone, people around you start experiencing transformation simply by being in your presence. It's as if your clear recognition creates a field of energy, an atmosphere where others can more easily glimpse their own divine nature. This phenomenon isn't about developing special healing powers or becoming some kind of spiritual guru that others should follow. It's much more organic and natural than that. When you consistently live from the recognition of your true identity, you naturally stop reinforcing others' limited self-concepts and begin reflecting back to them their own innate wholeness. This silent acknowledgement often does more to facilitate healing than hours of well-intentioned advice or therapeutic intervention. This was precisely how Joel Goldsmith was able to facilitate remarkable healings for thousands of people throughout his ministry, without ever claiming to heal anyone or taking credit for the transformations that occurred. He simply maintained consistent recognition of spiritual truth, both about himself and those who came to him, creating a space where people could experience their own divine nature and the natural healing that flows from that recognition. The journey of Sarah illustrates this principle perfectly. After suffering from debilitating anxiety disorder for 15 long years, she had become desperate for relief. She had tried everything: multiple medications, cognitive behavioral therapy, breathing techniques, meditation apps, energy healing, and countless other approaches. Thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours later, she still lived in constant fear, with her nervous system perpetually in fight-or-flight mode. When Sarah first encountered these teachings about Christ consciousness being her true identity, she initially dismissed them as impractical religious platitudes. How could abstract spiritual concepts possibly help with the very real, intense physical symptoms that often left her unable to function normally? But something deep within her recognized a ring of truth in these words that went beyond her intellectual skepticism. Rather than adding another technique to her arsenal of anxiety management strategies, Sarah began practicing something radically different. During moments when anxiety was particularly overwhelming, instead of fighting against the sensations or trying to make them go away through various coping mechanisms, she would silently acknowledge the divine presence within her. This anxiety is something I'm experiencing, but it is not what I am. This simple recognition created space between her true self and the temporary emotional weather passing through her experience. She wasn't denying the anxiety or pretending it wasn't happening. She was simply recognizing that these sensations and thoughts, however intense, weren't her fundamental identity. The blueprint for transformation had been activated. Within just a few weeks, something profound began shifting. The anxiety didn't magically disappear overnight, but her relationship to it changed so completely that the same feelings no longer had the power to control her life. She began experiencing a deep, unshakable peace underlying all surface emotions, like discovering still waters beneath turbulent waves. Let's explore how this same principle applies to other areas of human experience, where suffering seems inevitable, and how this recognition creates pathways to freedom that conventional approaches often miss entirely. If you've struggled with anxiety or emotional patterns that seem impossible to break, write in the comments, "I am not my emotions." Michael's story reveals another dimension of this profound truth. When facing severe financial crisis that threatened to destroy everything he had worked for throughout his adult life, he found himself at a breaking point. His business had failed, debts were mounting to overwhelming proportions, and he felt completely desperate, even abandoned by God. He began questioning everything he had believed about spiritual principles. When a close friend introduced Michael to Goldsmith's teachings about divine sonship and infinite supply, his initial reaction was skepticism. How could abstract spiritual concepts possibly solve very concrete problems like mortgage payments and business obligations? Like many of us, he wanted to use spiritual truth as a technique to fix his dire financial situation, essentially treating divine principles as a sophisticated manifestation. Method. The watershed moment came when Michael completely abandoned this approach. Instead of trying to use spiritual practices to attract money or manipulate circumstances, he began living from the recognition of his spiritual identity as the consciousness in which infinite supply already exists as present reality. Each morning, he would acknowledge the unlimited abundance within his own consciousness, not as a method for attracting prosperity, but as simple recognition of what was already true about his spiritual nature, regardless of bank account balances. This strategic mindset shift created space for something remarkable to unfold. New opportunities began appearing in the most unexpected ways and through the most unlikely channels. Former clients he hadn't heard from in years suddenly contacted him with profitable projects. Investment opportunities surfaced through casual conversations that led to significant returns he never could have planned or orchestrated. Yet, the true miracle wasn't the improved financial circumstances. The real transformation was Michael's entire relationship to security and abundance. He no longer lived in constant fear and worry about money because he finally understood that his true source wasn't external circumstances, but the infinite consciousness within him. The journey revealed that he had never actually been separate from his source of supply, the infinite creative intelligence that expresses as individual consciousness and naturally attracts everything needed for abundant living. Margaret's healing journey illuminates this same principle from an entirely different angle. After receiving a devastating diagnosis of advanced cancer that had spread throughout her body and wasn't responding to conventional treatments, doctors gave her only 6 months to live. She had exhausted all medical options. Traditional chemotherapy and radiation had failed to slow the progression of her condition. Feeling hopeless, angry, and terrified about leaving her young children without a mother, Margaret initially rejected spiritual approaches completely. When someone suggested that Christ consciousness was her true identity, she felt furious that anyone would offer what seemed like empty spiritual platitudes during such a profound medical crisis. Yet in her darkest moment of despair, something deep within her consciousness was willing to consider an alternative perspective, that there might be a truth about her identity that existed beyond medical diagnosis and statistical prognoses. She began spending time each day, not desperately praying for healing or bargaining with God, but simply resting in the quiet recognition of her spiritual wholeness that existed prior to any physical condition or medical label. This revelation began shifting Margaret's consciousness in subtle yet profound ways. Instead of identifying herself primarily as a person with cancer who might die, she started recognizing herself as eternal spiritual consciousness temporarily experiencing physical challenges. This wasn't denial of her medical condition or refusal of appropriate treatment. It was recognition of a deeper identity that remained whole, regardless of what appeared to be happening in her physical form. If you've ever faced a seemingly impossible health challenge or financial situation, share in the comments. I am more than my circumstances. These powerful stories of transformation aren't isolated incidents or rare spiritual achievements reserved for specially gifted individuals. They reflect what becomes possible when we integrate this recognition into our daily lives through simple yet profound practices. One of the most essential techniques Joel Goldsmith taught was maintaining what he called the listening attitude throughout your day. This listening attitude isn't about straining to hear an external God speaking to you in words or waiting for dramatic mystical experiences. It's about cultivating a gentle, ongoing awareness of the divine presence within your own consciousness during all daily activities. Whether you're in a business meeting, preparing dinner, having a conversation, or driving in traffic, you can maintain this subtle recognition of the Christ consciousness that constitutes your true identity. The practice is beautifully simple. Throughout your day, take brief moments to simply pause and silently acknowledge, the Christ that I am is present right now. You don't need to feel anything special or achieve any particular spiritual state. Simply recognize this truth about your identity in the present moment. This isn't about adding another task to your already busy schedule. It's about bringing a different quality of awareness to everything you're already doing. This practice gradually shifts your center of identity from personality, circumstances, emotions and thoughts to the changeless divine consciousness within you. Decisions begin flowing from inner wisdom rather than fear or conditioned patterns. Your actions become expressions of your spiritual nature rather than reactions to external triggers. This is what Goldsmith called living by grace, allowing divine intelligence to guide your journey naturally without the constant struggle of human will and effort. This inner recognition naturally extends to how you perceive others as well. When you encounter someone experiencing challenges, difficulties, illness, or any form of limitation, instead of sympathizing with their problems or getting caught up in their narrative of suffering, you can silently recognize their spiritual identity. You see them as divine consciousness appearing in human form rather than identifying them with their temporary circumstances or personality patterns. This silent acknowledgement isn't about ignoring practical needs or being coldly detached. It's about recognizing something fundamental about others that they may have temporarily forgotten about themselves. The illumination that comes from this recognition creates an atmosphere where healing and transformation can occur naturally through their own awakening to their true nature. The ripple effects of this practice are often astonishing. People begin sensing something different in your presence, a quality of acceptance and recognition that allows their own divine nature to surface more easily. Many report feeling mysteriously peaceful, inspired, or suddenly clear about solutions to problems after being with someone who practices this recognition consistently. The subtle power of this approach lies in its simplicity. You're not trying to change anyone, fix their problems, or convince them of spiritual truth. You're simply maintaining awareness of what they truly are, regardless of appearances, which creates a field where their own healing intelligence can activate naturally. Let's examine how this practice transforms our most challenging relationships and situations in ways that conventional approaches often miss entirely. If you've experienced how your perception of others affects their behavior and well-being, write in the comments. I hold the vision of wholeness. Another powerful dimension of this practice reveals itself when we face challenging emotions that typically overwhelm or destabilize us. Joel taught a remarkably effective approach for handling difficult emotions through spiritual recognition rather than through suppression, analysis, or resistance, methods that often intensify our suffering rather than alleviating it. When anger, fear, sadness, or any intense emotion arises in your experience, instead of fighting against it or getting caught in analyzing why it's happening, simply recognize your true identity in relation to it. Acknowledge silently, I am experiencing anger right now, but anger is not what I am. I am the divine consciousness observing this temporary emotional weather pattern. This insight creates a healthy space between your essential nature and passing emotional experiences. You're not denying or suppressing the emotion, quite the opposite. You're allowing it to be fully present in your awareness, while simultaneously recognizing that your fundamental identity remains untouched by any temporary feeling state. This perspective shift enables emotions to move through your experience naturally without becoming stuck or defining your self-concept. The freedom this practice brings is revolutionary. Most of us spend enormous energy either fighting against uncomfortable emotions or becoming completely identified with them, both approaches that keep us trapped in cycles of reactivity and suffering. This recognition offers a third path that neither suppresses nor indulges emotional patterns, but allows them to be present within the spaciousness of your true nature. When we extend this understanding to all areas of life, a comprehensive transformation begins unfolding naturally. Consider how your approach to work shifts when you live consistently from the awareness that Christ lives in you as your actual identity. Your career becomes an expression of your divine nature rather than a struggle for survival, security, or personal achievement. Business decisions begin flowing from inner wisdom and genuine service rather than from the fear, competition, or ego ambition that characterizes most commercial activity. You find yourself naturally attracted to opportunities and relationships that align with your spiritual values and support your highest expression, while situations that compromise your integrity or drain your energy naturally fall away without dramatic confrontations or forced exits. Your presence in meetings, collaborative projects, and all professional interactions takes on a quality that others notice and appreciate, even if they can't quite articulate what feels different about working with you. Similarly, all relationships undergo profound transformation when you consistently recognize the divine nature in yourself and others. Instead of relating to people based on their personality patterns, past behavior, or current circumstances, you maintain awareness of their spiritual identity beneath temporary expressions. This doesn't mean ignoring practical considerations or avoiding appropriate boundaries. Rather, you combine spiritual recognition with human wisdom, creating space for others to express their highest qualities naturally. When you stop reacting to people's limited expressions and consistently see their divine nature, they often begin responding from that higher level of their being. The blueprint of this approach creates pathways for resolving conflicts and healing relationships that conventional approaches often miss entirely. If you've noticed how your inner state affects your external environment and relationships, type in the comments, as within, so without. As we come to this moment of reflection in our exploration of Joel Goldsmith's profound teaching that Christ lives within you, I hope you've glimpsed something beyond intellectual understanding, perhaps a recognition of your own divine nature that was always present beneath the surface of your human experience. This recognition isn't something you achieve through effort, but something you allow yourself to remember in moments of presence. The journey of integrating this understanding into daily life is both beautifully simple and endlessly deep. If something in this message resonated with your own inner knowing, I'd love to continue this conversation with you in the comments. Simply write, "I recognize the Christ within," to let me know these teachings found their home in you. If you found value in this perspective, consider subscribing to join our community of spiritual explorers. Each week, we dive into these transformative principles that have the power to completely reconfigure your relationship with life's challenges and opportunities. Your subscription helps us continue creating content that points toward the deepest truths of our being. Leaving a like on this video helps others discover these teachings at exactly the moment they may need them most. A synchronicity that often brings these principles to people precisely when they're ready to receive them. I've created a video that explores how to apply these principles specifically to healing relationships that seem beyond repair. It's a perfect complement to what we've discussed today, revealing how the recognition of divine consciousness transforms even our most challenging connections. Click right here to continue this journey of discovery with me. The divine presence that you are is already complete. I'm simply honored to remind you of what you've always known.